Okay, I hope everybody had a good Shabbos and a good yesterday. Somebody just sent me a text that somebody's going into a surgery, so I'm going to dedicate this learning to Avram Chaim Ben Yenta Falka, who is having a very serious surgery as we learn, as we speak. So he should have refuah shleim, and anybody, all those people that need Yeshuas and refuah, this course will need a Torah, the one Shem should give the Yeshua and the refuah immediately. The Mishneh we're holding again, Pirkei Avos, Perek Aleph, Mishneh Hey, the fifth Mishnah. Oh, I have to silence my. Okay, I didn't hear a ding. I don't know if it's silenced. Okay, this says, Yosi ben Yochanan ish Yerushalayim. Omer. We said that there were two people. Every generation had what they called zugos after the Anshe Knesset Gdola and after Shimon HaTzadik. So the first set was Yosi ben Ye'ezah ish Tzreda and Yosi ben Yochanan ish Yerushalayim. So now we're going into Yosi ben Yochanan, who lived in Yerushalayim, and being that the Nasi, which we said one was a Nasi and one was the Rosh Hashiva, the Nasi Yosi ben Yezer said that you should open your house to Chachamim, and you should say close to Chachamim. So you would assume that that's it. You don't have to do anything else with your house more than that, because you're accomplishing so much for your house, for your family, and for yourself by inviting Chachamim and your house. Your house should be welcoming. We know that by Avraham Avinu. He thought that the Malachim were Arabs, and he ran after these three Arabs. They should come in, and in fact, the Gemara says we learned from there. Imagine you're speaking to Melech Malcham Lochem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you leave him in the middle of a conversation because you see three Arabs walking in the street, which is amazing. How could you do more kedusha and more godless than speaking to Rebbeinu Shalom panim al panim? Rebbeinu Shalom came to visit him because this was Yom Shlishi L'Mila. Avraham Avinu had a bris milah at 90 years old, and he came to be Mavaka Chayla. And he was sitting and talking, Kaviyachal sitting, but the Shechina was by him. And he says, hold it a minute, Rabbi Shalom. I see this guest, and he ran out. So the Gemara says that guest, we see from here, is even more important than Kabbalah's Pnei Shechina, than Rabbi Shalom himself. So actually, Mefarshim ask, how do you know it's more important? Maybe they're equal. He spoke over here, then he went over there. What makes it say that it's more important? There's a halacha that when somebody leaves a Beis Medrash or Makom Kedusha, or even when he leaves his Rebbe's house, I'm back. Hello?
Yeah. It's better now. Hello?
Okay, so hi. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. My phone froze. So I don't know where I was holding. I was just saying that Avraham Avinu, by running away from the Rebbeinu Shalom, his back was to the Rebbeinu Shalom, which means that there was less covet. The covet is you have to back out from Kedusha. You're supposed to face the shul when you walk out and back out of the shul or back out of your Rebbe's house. So here he turned around and faced the Arabs and invited them in. So he showed that that is even greater than Kabbalah's Pnei Shechina, which is an incredible thought, actually, if you think about it. So what does he say? Yosef ben Yochanan Yerushalayim. He says like this: your house should become a house, an open house, and inviting, so people should come into the house. And don't think that we're talking about, just like we said before, Talmidei Chachamim, v'yiyu aniyim b'nei veischa. So the aniyim, you should invite poorer people. And the lashon in the Mishneh is interesting. Treat the poor people as if they were members of your house. B'nei beischa. So there's a few different pshatim on why they use this particular term like this. B'nei beischa. There was when he was a child, first of all, he was exceptionally wealthy, as was his father. When he's in Alexander, people knew any traveler in the area, if you need a place to stay at night, he lived in a very large house. And he was known as what they called a machnes oirech. People used to come to him to spend the evening on the way. A lot of times they used to come, even from not necessarily poor people, but a traveler in those days, it was difficult. There was, you didn't sit in a car, it was a buggy, and it was dusty, and it was difficult, it was bumpy. So you went for the night, you stayed over there. And there was this fellow goes, he was a businessman. He came from Brod. Brod was the marketplace at the time. And he went to Alexander. From the paper, he says, so let's wedding begins before you start taking. So the wedding he was well. He went up. He went such a cool room. He said, yeah.
Could everybody hear?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, now I can.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know where I left off. So
We started from the beginning of the story.
okay, so there was this Alexander Rebbe. His name was a Perek, and his father was exceptionally wealthy, as was he inherited later, and it was a major Hasidus. It was tens of thousands of Hasidim, and actually 90% of them were killed during the war. And when he was a child, his father, he lived obviously in his Rebbe his father was the Alexander Rebbe, but he was so comfortable that he used to invite as many people as possible. The house was what they called an open house. It was a little motel almost. And you can come in and have as much as you need. Any poor person can come, or even just a traveler. And people used to travel, was difficult traveling times because, the roads weren't good. You traveled horse and buggy. was dusty. So you needed to relax. So you found along the way a motel, obviously. And what happened was this businessman who came from the city of Brud, which was the main market area at that time, was traveling, and he heard about this great Machne Zoyrich, person who invites guests and without any charge and anything. And he walks in and he sees that there's light and there's looks like a wedding is going on. There's so much food on tables, and he sees poor people are taking. So he went over to one of them. He said, "Why don't you wait till the wedding begins at least before you start taking off the tables?" So the guy starts laughing, and he says, "There's no wedding here. This is a typical night. This is a typical day, the way he treats everybody. He lays out as much as possible. Anything that was available as food went was on one of those tables." And he was exceptionally generous. Then he went up to sleep, and there was a down pillow and a down cover. It was exceptional. He said it was my best night's sleep in the last month, because sometimes you would travel 2 weeks just to get to the market. And during the night, so he wakes up in the morning and he sees that his shoes are missing. He sees his shoes are missing. He says, "I'm such a place like this. Who's stealing my shoes?" And he sees the shoes in the corner. So he looks at it. It's a brand new pair of shoes. So he puts it on. He says, "Amazing! It's my size. How do they know this? Who did this?" Then he realizes that somebody during the night took out the shoes, polished it up, and resold them, put new soles on them, and it looked like a brand new pair of shoes. He was amazed. So that night, he decided to stay another day. He wanted to see what this was all about. He stayed another night, and he pretended to sleep. He saw this little boy walk in. He was about 10 years old. And this little boy, this Reb Henoch Cohen, who was later became the Alexander Rebbe, he took his shoe. He looked at the shoes. Everything was fine, and he went to the next room. He followed him. He took out jackets and shoes, and he brought them downstairs. And in the basement of the house, there was like as if it was daylight. There was light, light was not regular lights. It was torches. And 8, 9, 10. There were shoe repair fellows. There were people mending clothing. It was amazing. And every morning, everybody woke up, and everything was completely mended. When the Gemara Mishneh says, "V'yiyu aniyim b'nei veischa," what he's trying to say is like this: if you set up your house that the bell rings and you say, "Oh, another schnorrer," or "Oh, what's going on? No, I don't want to answer the phone. Don't tell them I'm not home." Then your children are going to be the same way. You have to, if the generosity is in a house is starts by the parents. And the children learn from that, and that's how they grow up. And it doesn't just manifest itself with tzedakah. It's the way you treat other people as well. They see that you have their it's even somebody who is not in your status, and that's another thing. You have a lot of money, but you don't have to live ostentatiously. You don't have to necessarily dress your children to the point where they stand out, which in a way is not such a healthy thing for the child in itself. And I remember there was this guy in my class. For in those days, I had one pair of glasses till they broke. He used to come in every 3 weeks with another pair of glasses, and it was strange. Everybody used to make it, and he was a very nice guy. But his parents didn't realize that, and he had money. And then the parents didn't realize that you can't be stray. You can't treat your child. That every child should be treated in the way that everybody else in the classes. If you go to a school where everybody wears designer stuff, then it makes sense. But if everybody wears average clothing or a little nicer than average, it's also okay. But don't be so ostentatious. So you open it up. But your children and your household, you should treat yourself. You should also not necessarily be ostentatious with yourself, and try to be in a level where you can live amongst other people, and people shouldn't necessarily have to do things, comment about you and say, "Oh, this is," because it's not such a healthy thing. It's not good for her as well. Now, Mishnah continues, which sounds a little bit of a interesting comment to make. A person shouldn't speak excessively to women, but when the Mishnah originally says it, It's talking about Be'ishtoi, even his own wife, which is, and it's not something that you would normally think would be the right thing. But how do we, where does this come in? Where does it fit in with what we just said previously? And maybe that's what the Mishneh is also trying to say. Although it does have a Pashut shop as well, which I'll get into. Okay, so you're a nice guy, and you're in shul, and you see a guy that doesn't have where to go or anything like that. And he says, you know what? Why don't you come to me for breakfast? Come to me for breakfast. Now, between me and you, when I invite somebody for breakfast, I'm not giving him breakfast. Who's giving him breakfast? It's going to be my wife. So when I invite somebody to come to you for a Shabbos, and you're putting your wife into a situation where she feels, oh, breakfast? Okay, let's go run out and buy bagels and lox because my husband called me. He's bringing somebody home for breakfast, or he's making for Shabbos. He has to. Or let me make another 3 additional things because I'm bringing an onion. Oh, sure. You have to treat him like you would treat Bnei Beischa, the way you would treat your family. Comfortable. You have things in the refrigerator as we speak. You could make the eggs and the toast and the whatever you're going to eat for yourself is just as good as if you give it to the ani as well. You don't have to, because you're not doing it. You're putting somebody else out. So don't call up your wife and you know what? Bringing somebody home and you just prepares a lavish meal. Not necessary at all. An adequate meal also. In fact, there's a detriment to this as well, because if you're going to always have a problem, you're going to, your wife is going to complain, you brought me another guest, I'm so tired. So what's going to end up happening is you're not going to invite people at all, and then it'll completely end. So what you're actually hurting the situation. So rather put whatever you have in your refrigerator, don't go overboard. Just do whatever you feel is necessary. And that's the connection of these two parts of the Mishnah. Al tar b'sicha Mishnah is be'ishtay amru. Kal v'chayma be'eshes chaverei. So now already, this is more the pshat of what the Mishnah actually is trying to say. Besides what he said before, keep your house open. So you would think, when you would start inviting people inside, and of course everybody sits down and to talk. So maybe the ani is going to sit here, or the guest is going to sit, and they're going to have major conversations and get a little too friendly. It's not a good thing. Try to keep it to a certain point where it has a tzniah, it's derech eretz. It shouldn't reach a place where it's not supposed to be. So he says, Al tar b'sicha me'isha be'ishtay amru, kal v'chayma be'eshes chaveira. Of course, when you talk about Ishtay Amru, now again, how does we talk about over here? What would speaking to your wife have a problem? In fact, the Chachamim encourage, the Chafetz Chaim encourage people, all the Gedolim reverse. You should actually speak to your wife. What they're talking about is this. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was at his sister-in-law comes into the house, his wife's sister, and she's speaking to his wife, and then she turns to Shlomo Zalman and says, I have a shidduch for my daughter that was recommended for me. Somebody, a bacha that I think he learns in your yeshiva. Could you tell me about him? So he says, oh, he's a wonderful boy. He really is a wonderful boy. I don't know. He says a few very nice things about the boy. And that was that. The conversation. Then she went back to speaking to her sister, and then she left. The minute she left, Shlomo Zalman ran out of the house and ran to her house and was there before she even got there. And when she got there, he was standing by her door, and he said, "But this boy is not for your daughter. He's a very nice boy, but he's not for your daughter." So she didn't. So why did you tell me in the house? She said, because my wife was there. She has no. I have. When it comes to a shidduch, I have to be honest and tell you what is appropriate, what's not appropriate. But my wife doesn't necessarily have to hear lashon hara. So sometimes you think when you're speaking at home, because the Gemara says ishtoi kagufa, your wife is like your own self. So if you know something that's a real lashon hara about somebody else, it's okay to speak about it with your wife and have a whole conversation about it. So the Mishnah says no. Ishtay Amru, if you're going to be marba sicha with your wife and you're going to start talking things that are not really appropriate or lashon hara rather towards another human, somebody else, that's against halacha. So that's another thing that the Mishnah wants to avoid and be careful with. The Mishnah continues. We said, of course, like this, that when you kal v'chomer, of course, means if you can't talk to your wife, you certainly shouldn't be talking to strange women just for absolutely no reason. From here, the Chachamim added to this mission. In other words, Yosef ben Yochanan said the klal, whatever happened over here, but the Chachamim added to this what he said, and they said like this. Kalamar v'sicha im ha'isha goyrim ro la'atzmai u'boitel medivre Torah v'sefer yerush gehenna. And I'll repeat that again. Anybody who just excessively will speak to women, and so what he's doing is really two things happen over here. First of all, he causes bad things to happen. Sometimes you'll say things and you'll tell your wife something. For example, you have a bad day at the office. Something really, really bad happened. And it just everything went miserable. Now, of course, you like to share things with your wife so that you have somebody that commiserates with you. But there are times when you share things with your wife that have absolutely no beneficial value. The only thing you're doing is sharing it with her, and from there, her night is going to be miserable. What you did was you made her miserable as well now. So not only are you miserable, there are two miserable people in this house. And what's going to happen? So then everybody snipes at each other, and all of a sudden there's arguing and thing that goes on in the house. At certain times, you have to be a little bit smart about it. If, of course, it's good to unload and to share things. But on the other hand, sometimes where you see there's no real benefit other than the fact of is just talking about it to somebody else that will just commiserate to the point that she herself will feel so bad that the whole night is ruined. Here she prepared a dinner and the kids are finally in bed. She wants to have a good conversation. And for the next 2 hours, it's like a down, it's a depression in the house. So in a way, it's many, many times there are things that you should just really bite the bullet, so to speak. You had a bad day, you move on, tomorrow's another day, and Amir Hashem, things will get better. And that's what you have to hope. That's the first thing. So that's what they said is goyim rola atzmai. So who at the end loses? You think it's a benefit when you're telling it to no, because she now has a middle, and for the rest of the evening till tomorrow morning, your night is ruined. So you it's not good for you as well. It's also vital, of course, with different Torah. When somebody is depressed, or somebody is not having a good time, or somebody is in the middle of an argument, you're going to say, okay, excuse me now, I'm going to go sit and learn Torah, or at the time you're speaking, just listen. First of all, we know, the halacha is you should be learning at every available moment. Of course, we're all humans, and people have to take life the way they are. And later, even the Mishneh itself later is going to talk about that, where everything is within reason. But if you have a shear at night, you're going to say, I'm not going to, you just depressed, you don't want to leave. So you just go into a corner and you sulk and you don't go to learn. So you're losing out, hey, you spoke lashon hara, or B, you made somebody else miserable, which by the way is which again is an isser. And third of all, you mavatal the Torah. So what happens with that? Sefer yerush gehenna. If you don't have Torah and you're constantly fighting or you're constantly miserable, what the mitzvahs and the whole thing is mitzvah gedolah liyas b'simcha. Is what does it mean, mitzvah gedolah? It's one of the greatest of the mitzvahs because being b'simcha increases your ability to do mitzvahs. So therefore, you'll have the ability to continue to do mitzvahs, and then you're not going to be, the sefer is not going to be chas v'shalom yerush gehenna, that you're going to have, unfortunately, yerush is inherit, so that's like a gehenna. But on the other hand, you'll go to a place where you really want to go. So I'm going to end with that. And if you should help, we should have a wonderful day. So we shouldn't have these things that we shouldn't even have to do these things. And thank you very much for listening. Take care. Have a good day.
Thank you.
I'm going to close this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
You're welcome.